Wasn't the truth that messed up their life, it was you speaking it out loud. Picture this for a second. A snake lives in darkness for years, moving around, planning, hiding where no one can see. Day after day, no one says a word. It becomes bold, confident, even louder with time. But the moment someone switches the lights on, that snake starts panicking, not because it was crawling around, but because now someone finally sees it clearly. That's exactly what happened when you decided to speak. You turned on the light in a space full of shadows that thought they'd stay hidden forever. That's why they're nervous now. Not because you yelled, not because you were rude or angry, but because your truth hit harder than anything they ever prepared for. You said the one thing they never thought you'd say, and the second you did, it was over for them. Here's something to keep in mind. Most major shifts in the world didn't start with army. They started with one person deciding not to stay silent anymore. One person finally saying, "I'm done pretending this lie is okay." That's when real change begins. That's when everything opens up. And you, chosen one, were that moment. You weren't overreacting. You were just telling it like it is. Your words cracked open the fake peace they built. Now they're rushing to fix the pieces. Why? Because you didn't just speak your truth. You broke the silence they needed to survive. And for that, thank you. Really. If this hits you deep, make sure to like and subscribe so this message reaches the ones who need it. We're in this together. You're part of a movement now, a wave of real truth that's only growing stronger. Let's go back to what really happened. Chosen one, you spoke, and yeah, it flipped everything. You didn't just drop some words, you turned the whole situation on its head. You weren't shouting, but what you said hit hard. You didn't ask anyone to agree with you, but the second it came out of your mouth, the energy shifted. You didn't just shake the room, you shook the whole story they made up around you. That story they forced you into, that story they never thought you'd break free from. But you did, and you did it with just a few powerful words. They trained you to be quiet. They made it your job to hide their secrets. They built their whole reality around the idea that you'd never speak. And still, you spoke. Do you know how rare that is? Do you realize how powerful that makes you? Most people never find that kind of bravery. But you had it in you the whole time, and when you finally let those words out, you didn't just call out lies, you shifted the spiritual setup. You knocked down walls that held pain for generations. You brought out things they thought would never be uncovered, and you did it without raising your voice. You stood in truth, and that alone was louder than anything else. That's why they're spinning now. That's why they're switching up the story, playing innocent, trying to clean up the mess. Because your words broke their illusion, and illusions can't stand in real light. You didn't scream. You moved the entire atmosphere. You didn't go on a rant. You changed reality. You weren't seeking revenge. You were asking for things to finally be real. And they couldn't take it. They weren't ready for your voice because they never expected to hear it. You were the quiet one, the one who knew when to keep things to yourself. But that version of you doesn't exist anymore. Silence is not your language anymore. Keeping things bottled up isn't your home anymore. They never saw it coming. You weren't supposed to be the main character in their story. But now you're not just part of it, you're writing it. And when you spoke, you became a mirror. You made people see the parts of themselves they were hiding from. That's why the vibe changed. That's why people started acting weird, because they could feel it, the shift. They could feel everything turning in your favor, like the universe itself saying yes, finally. Let them say you were being dramatic. Let them say it wasn't necessary. That's what people say when they've been caught. Deep down, they know you weren't just talking, you were tearing down everything fake. You gave the quiet ones courage. You gave the unsure ones confirmation. You gave the ones who caused harm a wake-up call. So don't ever doubt yourself. Don't question your strength. You didn't destroy anything that wasn't already falling apart. You just stopped pretending it was okay. That's why everything feels different now. Because it is. You didn't just speak, you caused a shift the world had been waiting on. And now, there's no going back. So ask yourself, are you ready to go even deeper? If something inside of you is lighting up right now, know that you're not alone. If that moment when you finally spoke changed your whole life, drop a 77 in the comments. And if this message hits you in your spirit, show love with a super thanks. Every little bit keeps this movement alive and growing, because voices like yours, they matter. They need to be heard and protected and shared. Now let's dig deeper. If you're a true chosen one, if you know that moment you spoke up shifted everything, then you're going to want to keep listening. This is your story. Let's get into it. First off, they were counting on you staying quiet. That's the only reason things seemed peaceful. The second you used your voice, their fantasy fell apart. Let's be real, chosen one. What you did, it was war. Not the kind with fights and weapons, but the kind that shakes people to their core. Because when you finally spoke, you didn't just share your side. You ended the lie they were all holding on to. And now they're choking on the truth. The silence they built their comfort on, it's gone. And it's your voice that took it down. Think of it like this. A big fancy building that's been standing for years. Nice floors, glass windows, friendly faces. But underneath, there's a dark basement full of secrets and pain. No one talks about it. It's off limits. Everyone just acts like it doesn't exist. Then one day, your voice goes down those steps and boom, the whole foundation falls. That voice was yours. That's why they're scared now. That's why they're trying to change the story and put it back together. Because you didn't just question them. You exposed everything. You weren't being dramatic. You were being real. And they knew it the second you opened your mouth. They built their comfort on your silence. They passed around their dysfunction like it was normal, expecting you to smile through it. You were supposed to stay quiet. You were supposed to be the bigger person. But let's tell the truth. That was just code for stay small so we can stay in control. And you broke that code. You didn't whisper. You blew it up. Your words weren't just sentences. They were like spiritual bombs. And the damage? It's still spreading. On the outside, they might look calm. But inside, they're falling apart. Because your words didn't stay at the surface. They hit deep. Your truth weighed more than they could handle. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. They didn't just want you silent to protect their image. They needed it to keep their power. Your silence was the last thing holding together the lie. And once you cut that thread, game over. Their whole act fell apart. And what makes it even worse for them is that you weren't even trying to take anyone down. You just wanted to breathe. You wanted peace. And somehow, that alone felt like rebellion. That honesty felt like destruction. That truth felt like rage. But that's not your fault. That's what happens when people lie for so long. They start to think silence means peace. But you, chosen one, weren't built for fake peace. You were built for truth. Let them call you too much. Let them say you should have kept it private. That's just people talking while their masks fall off. That's panic talking. That's what fear sounds like when it gets exposed. Their reactions are proof that you weren't just talking, you were freeing something. Even if you didn't know it in the moment, your voice carried every soul that was ever forced into silence, every person who was told to smile through abuse, every human who was expected to be quiet, respectful, and grateful while hurting. You spoke for them too. That's why the energy shifted. That's why some people couldn't even look you in the eye. That's why others just vanished without explanation. Your truth wasn't just loud, it was powerful. And some people would rather stay in chains than admit you broke yours. They're not mad because you made something up. They're mad because you told the truth. They're upset because you had the guts to say what everyone else was thinking but too scared to admit. Your truth pulled the cover off decades of silence. Now they're scrambling, not to make it right but to twist the story. Let them post. Let them act. Let them pretend. None of it matters now. The moment your truth came out, the lie lost its grip. And here's what makes you a real threat now. You'll never go back to being silent. That version of you? Gone. They can't unhear what you said. They can't erase what you've realized. They can't put back together what your voice broke. And honestly, some are still upset they didn't get to choose which chains got broken. But that's not your job to fix. You didn't do it for praise. You did it because you had to. So if they ask, why now? Say, because silence was killing me. If they say, you're ruining everything, say, no, I'm revealing it. And if they act like you're the problem, just remember, you're not the fire. You're the one who finally stopped pretending everything wasn't already burning. Walk in your truth, chosen one. Head up, energy clear. Because what you did wasn't just bold, it changed everything. And now that silence can't hurt you anymore. And that's what really scares them. Now go ahead and drop the next part when you're ready, and I'll continue from exactly where we left off. Dear chosen ones, your love inspires us to create meaningful content just for you. If our efforts have touched your heart, you can show your support by clicking the Super Thanks button on your YouTube screen. Every bit of your kindness means the world to us and keeps us going. Thank you for being the amazing support system that you are. Now back to the topic. It wasn't just that your truth hurt, it cracked their whole image wide open. They walked around acting like nothing could touch them, like they were untouchable. Then your voice came through like a wrecking ball they never expected. Let's not twist it, chosen one. What you said wasn't just some random words, it was the end of the lie they'd been living in for way too long. You didn't need to yell, you didn't need to make a scene, but the second you said what had been stuck in your throat all that time, their little story shattered. They'd built it up, piece by piece, fake smile by fake moment, and you weren't even trying to burn it down. You were just trying to breathe. Picture a stage, beautiful curtain, bright lights, perfect lines. Everyone plays their role like clockwork, but then someone flips on a black light, and suddenly you see every stain, every crack, every lie. That's what your truth did. It showed the dirt they thought no one would ever notice. And now, they're spinning. They weren't ready for the clarity you brought. You didn't guess your way through it. You remembered. You didn't guess at all. You knew, and that's the part they can't handle, because your truth didn't just shake their made-up story. It replaced it with the real one. You didn't need a stage or a mic. Just your voice in its raw, honest form flipped everything upside down. Now they're falling apart, not because you called them out directly, but because your truth didn't match the mask they were wearing. The mask is falling off, and what's underneath? It's not clean. See, that mess was always there. Your truth just made people smell what they were trying to pretend wasn't rotting. That's why they're scrambling now, trying to act like they're innocent. But the energy around them, it's different. Your story didn't just shine light on one thing, it pulled the whole web apart. The fake alliances, the little secrets, the quiet threats, all of it. You were the one they didn't plan for, the voice they didn't expect. And now everything they built on your silence is falling apart. You weren't out to ruin them, they just couldn't survive in truth. And now that the lights are on, the show's over. They can cry and shout and spin it however they want, but it's too late. You, chosen one, became the very thing they feared the most, a truth they couldn't control. You didn't wait for their permission, and that's exactly why it hit different. You didn't follow their rules. You exposed the ones who made. You see, they never thought you'd speak because they built their little world around the idea that you'd always stay quiet, be nice, be polite, smile through the chaos like everything was fine. But that was never your role. You weren't made to keep secrets that made your soul heavy. You weren't here to protect fake harmony. You came to break the lie. And the second you opened your mouth without their say-so, it wasn't just a statement, it was a rebellion. That's what shook everything. You didn't wait for approval from the same people who benefited from your silence. You didn't raise your hand and ask to speak. You became the message itself. You didn't ask for a key, you kicked the door open. And they hated that, not because you made something up, but because you told the truth, your way, without asking. Think about this, a room full of puppets, each one moving on command. Then you show up, cut your strings, and say, "I'm done dancing like this." That's exactly what you did. And once you did, others started reaching for their own scissors too. You weren't there to win anybody over. You weren't chasing applause. You were simply clearing the air, even if the truth stung everyone in the room. And that's what rattled them. You didn't just mess up their game, you ended it. You spoke from the role they tried to erase you from. And let's keep it real, they didn't think you had it in you. They figured you'd stay stuck, too afraid or too ashamed to speak up. But instead, you shattered the illusion. Now everyone sees the cracks they were taught to ignore. You didn't show up polished, you showed up real. And the truth always hits harder when it's not dressed up. You didn't follow their plan, you blew it up. And just by doing that, you gave others the green light to tear up their scripts too. Now they're mad, but it's too late. You already started something bigger than them. The match is lit, the shift is here. You changed the game without even trying to play. They were living off your silence until it became the thing that took them out. They acted like your quiet meant defeat, like stillness meant you were weak, like not speaking meant you were guilty. They were way off. They saw you being quiet and thought they'd won. They didn't know you were just building your strength. You weren't giving up, you were getting ready. While they joked behind your back, made up stories, and acted like you were lost, you were paying attention. You saw it all. Every time they made you the problem, every time they called you crazy or too sensitive or too emotional, you felt it all. But silence doesn't mean nothing's happening. Silence is storage. You were collecting facts while they were putting on a show. They tried to turn your silence into a weapon for their benefit. They thought they could use it to rewrite the truth. But you were sharpening it behind the scenes. Picture a warrior sitting still for hours, letting the enemy talk all their talk. Then suddenly, that warrior stands up, pulls out a blade so sharp it slices through the past, and swings. That's you. That's exactly what you did. They never saw it coming because they thought they had already crushed your spirit. But your silence wasn't fear, it was strategy. You let them show their true selves. You let them write their own false ending. And then you burned the whole script. When you spoke, it wasn't messy, it was exact. Your truth was so sharp, they couldn't dodge it. You laid it all out like proof in a trial. You weren't screaming or attacking, you were just laying down facts. And those facts did what yelling never could. Your silence held the timeline, the emotions, the receipts. And when you spoke, it all came out clean, clear, and strong. They're choking on their own lies now. Not because you lied, but because you didn't. You didn't stoop to their level. You didn't need drama. You didn't need a show. You just needed the truth to breathe. And when it did, it exposed everything. They never expected the quiet one to flip the whole table. But that's why silence is dangerous. People who stay quiet don't forget. They remember. They watch. They gather. And when they finally speak, it's not for revenge. It's to bring the truth to light. You didn't have to fight. You just had to speak. And now, they'll be running from the truth you gave life to. Let them deal with the mess. You already did the healing. You turned the thing they used against you into the very thing that set you free. You weren't trying to be a guide, but your voice ended up becoming the light someone else needed. Sometimes, all it takes is one brave soul to speak from the dark, and suddenly, the whole cave lights up. You weren't trying to be a leader. You weren't chasing fame or praise. You were just trying to get through it. You were just trying to understand what was happening inside you, trying to find space to breathe. But when you finally spoke, in your raw, honest voice, you didn't realize someone out there was holding their breath, waiting for a sign. That's the power of your truth. Pain recognizes pain. Realness attracts realness. Your words didn't just land, they hit people where it mattered. Some folks had been drowning in silence, thinking they were alone. But then they heard you, and suddenly they had something to grab onto. You didn't just tell your story, you opened a window in a room that felt like it was closing in on them. For someone out there, what you said gave them their first real breath in a long time. It was the first time they felt seen. It was the first time they thought, wait, I'm not crazy. That happened to me too. Imagine someone lost deep in the woods, no map, no clue where to go. Then they hear a voice, not yelling, not pretending to know everything, just saying, I was here too. There's a hill, there's a drop. I tripped, but I made it through. That's what you did. Your voice became a guide, not because you planned it, but because you spoke the truth, while still figuring things out yourself. What you went through became a path for someone else. You gave words to pain that usually has no language. You pointed out the things people were too scared to admit. You named manipulation that didn't leave bruises. You explained how it feels to be gaslit, erased, blamed. And in doing that, you helped others breathe again. You didn't need to be perfect. You just needed to be present. People didn't follow you because you had all the answers. They followed you because you were real, because you were honest, because you bled in public and still stood tall. Now others are walking too, finding their way because you dared to tell the truth out loud. You didn't plan to be a map, but healing has a way of following the ones who speak after the fire. Your story didn't just matter to you, it mattered to them. And somewhere out there right now, someone's whispering, thank you, because your voice gave them hope. You didn't just make it out, you lit the way. You didn't just break their control, you showed the world how messy they were when they lost it. The truth doesn't need to yell. It just has to stand solid while the lie falls apart on its own. They weren't ready for what you had inside you, not because you were aggressive, but because your truth was clear, sharp, and quiet at first, then powerful like thunder. When you finally said it, it wasn't just personal. It hit on every level, emotional, mental, spiritual. It shook their whole image. See, they thought if they could just control the story, they'd be fine. If they gaslit you long enough, twisted the facts hard enough, maybe you'd never speak. But you did, and the second you did, their whole illusion started breaking. Not just because your words were honest, but because their whole identity relied on those words never being said. They didn't just lose their control, they lost their grip on the story. You want to know someone's real face? Watch what they do when they can't spin the truth anymore. They didn't stay calm, they spiraled, they panicked, they moved like someone who just lost their air. And that reaction, that's all the proof you need. That smear campaign, the gaslighting, the fake tears, it wasn't strategy. It was them getting exposed. Because real truth stands strong. Fake innocence performs. Imagine a play, everything perfect on stage. Then someone walks up and pulls the curtain. And behind it, chaos, panic, lies. That's what happened. You didn't have to shout. You didn't have to point fingers. You just told your truth, and their mess showed up on its own. You weren't the drama. You were the reflection. They did the rest all by themselves. You didn't need to fight. You just stopped hiding. And by doing that, you broke the spell they had on everyone watching. They could have kept pretending if they just left your truth alone. But their need for control made everything fall apart. They tried to bury you, but they ended up digging up everything they wanted to stay hidden. Now you don't need to get even. They're undoing themselves. If you feel this stirring inside you, drop 77 in the comments now. Let every other chosen one know that the shift has begun. Stay tuned, because what comes next will shake you to your core. What you said didn't just reveal the truth. It turned into a mirror they couldn't look away from. You didn't just tell your story. You showed them something they'd been avoiding for years, something they'd pushed down so deep they forgot it was even there. That's why it hit so hard, because what you said wasn't just about you. It made everyone who heard it stop and think about their own actions, what they did, what they let slide, what they didn't speak up about, and the excuses they told themselves for it all. And this kind of mirror doesn't just show a moment, it shows the soul. You didn't need to accuse anyone. You didn't have to point fingers or shout names. Your story spoke through patterns, and those patterns exposed a lot. It wasn't that you were wrong. It's that you were right in a way they couldn't ignore or explain away. Suddenly, the silence they held onto felt heavy. The excuses they used didn't feel solid anymore. I didn't know started to sound like I didn't want to know. That's why they reacted the way they did. That's why people who once seemed close started acting distant. Because it's easier to call you negative than admit they watched you suffer and said nothing. It's easier to say you're too emotional than to admit they stayed quiet when you needed them most. Your words brought guilt up to the surface. And guilt, when people don't deal with it, turns into blame. You weren't trying to hurt anyone. You were trying to breathe. But your breath held so much truth it turned into light. And not everyone was ready for that light. Some people pushed back, some disappeared, some tried to flip the story on you. But deep down, they weren't reacting. They were reacting to what you made them see in themselves. You became the reflection they didn't want to face. And here's the thing, mirrors don't make people look bad. They just show what's already there. You didn't cause the problem. You showed the truth. You chose not to look away. And in doing that, you reminded them of the version of themselves they abandoned a long time ago. So if they ran from you, blamed you, or acted like you changed, just know, it wasn't really about you. It was about what your truth revealed. And some people would rather break the mirror than face their reflection. Your courage didn't just free you, it lit something in others. You didn't speak to be noticed. You spoke because holding it in was getting too heavy. And that one honest moment did something powerful. It didn't just break your silence, it broke a chain. See, courage spreads. It reaches people. It moves them. It wakes things up. When people heard what you said, it didn't just inspire them. It stirred something inside. It poked at that quiet part of them that's been whispering, "You need to speak too." There were people watching you silently, holding their own pain and stories, thinking they were alone, people who thought no one would understand. And then you showed up, not perfect, not polished, but real. And that's why it worked. That's why it changed things. You were the spark, just one little flame that turned into a fire in places you'll never see. You didn't need to give people permission. You just showed them it's possible, that speaking up won't destroy you. Sometimes it's the start of finally living. That's what real courage does. It doesn't yell for attention. It doesn't try to be a hero. It just shows up and stands firm. Some people tried to brush it off. They laughed, they rolled their eyes. But even if they didn't say it, they felt it. You shook something loose in them. You cracked through the walls they thought were protecting them. And now, some of them are whispering their own truths. Some are just breathing differently, and some are finally stepping out of the silence. But all of it started because you went first. You thought you were just trying to survive. But the universe used that moment to wake up others. You didn't start a trend. You started a wave. And once truth starts moving, it can't be held back. So no, you're not just brave. You became the reason someone out there finally believed in their own voice. You're the proof that silence doesn't keep us safe. And truth isn't something to fear. Your courage didn't just help you, it gave someone else the push they needed to speak too. They said you burned bridges, but what you really did was burn the map that led to your own suffering. They're gonna twist the story like they always do. They'll say you overreacted, that you walked away from love, from peace, from family. They'll act like you ruined everything. But what they won't say is the real truth. That bridge wasn't built on peace. It was built to trap you. You didn't destroy a connection. You ended a setup. That bridge led to a place where your needs didn't matter, your voice was too loud, your feelings were too much. It wasn't built for balance. It was built for control. And when you stopped crossing it, when you finally said, "This doesn't feel like love, it feels like a cage," they didn't just lose your presence. They lost their power. Because you didn't just cut off access. You burned the rule book they were using to keep you small. That invisible set of rules you were never allowed to question, the ones that said, "Stay quiet, stay nice, don't make waves, be what we expect." You lit it up. And once you did, they couldn't use it on you anymore. They didn't panic because you left. They panicked because you left with your eyes wide open. You saw through it all. And now, they're stuck using the same tired tricks on someone who's not playing that game anymore. Their silence doesn't hurt like it used to. Their guilt trips don't land. You're no longer pretending pain is love. You didn't burn a bond. You broke a cycle. You ended something that generations before you didn't know how to stop. You walked away, even when it meant being alone. You chose freedom over familiar. And the best part? You didn't do it in anger. You did it with full awareness. That bridge was never meant to carry both sides. It only worked if you stayed small. And now, you've built something new. A path where your truth can breathe. Let them tell their story, but deep down they know what really happened. You didn't burn anything that was real. You ended what was built to break you. They couldn't handle your truth, so they came for your image. The second you spoke up, they rushed to cover themselves. Not to fix what was broken, not to own up, but to flip the script, to make you the one who messed everything up. You stopped staying quiet, and suddenly you became the villain in their story. They called you dramatic, said you were bitter, said you were making things up. But it wasn't because your truth was false, it was because it was too real. It broke through the nice little story they told about themselves, and that scared them. So they grabbed every trick they could think of, twisting your words, playing the victim, dragging your name. But here's what they didn't count on. Truth doesn't need help. It stands on its own. While they were panicking, trying to shape how people saw you, the truth stayed steady. You didn't have to argue. You didn't have to scream for people to understand. The truth spoke for you, one quiet day at a time, because real stories don't change. They don't shift depending on who's asking. But lies need maintenance. Lies fall apart when people start asking questions. And people noticed. They saw how your story stayed the same, how your words came from calm, not chaos. They saw how you weren't trying to tear anyone down. You were just finally standing up. You didn't have to defend yourself. The truth did that work for you, slowly, quietly, but fully. Now, some of the same people who doubted you are starting to see through the drama. They're starting to notice the holes in the story, the fake emotions, the constant need to control the narrative. You never needed a defense team. You just needed time. And time has always been on your side. You weren't the bad one. You were the one who stopped pretending. You were the one who pulled back the curtain. And people who've been hiding behind that curtain don't like the light, but they can't stop it. So let them talk. Let them twist it all they want. The truth is still standing. And in the end, the truth always wins. And you've been the truth the whole time. Now, just showing up is enough to shake a room. There used to be a time where you'd enter quietly, trying not to be seen, trying to fit in, trying to stay out of the way. You questioned if you belonged. You held your breath. You made yourself smaller just to avoid trouble. But not anymore. Now, when you walk in, everything changes. And it's not because you're loud. It's because your stillness has power. You don't need to talk big. You don't need to prove anything. You've got presence. You walk in truth and people feel that. You don't need to explain. You don't need to perform. Just being yourself is enough. And that chosen one, that shakes people. Because you don't show up trying to be liked anymore. You show up as a mirror. And when people look at you, they see the things they've been avoiding in themselves. You don't even need to speak. Your energy says it all. It says, I've been through pain, and I'm still standing. I've seen the lies, and I chose truth anyway. I know masks when I see them. I see you, and that's what rattles them. You are a reminder that healing is real, that survival matters. That truth doesn't need to yell, it just needs to exist. People don't avoid you because you're wrong. They avoid you because you've seen them. And some people will do anything to keep hiding. But others, they watch you. They try to copy you. But they can't copy what came from your pain, your fire, your journey. You didn't fake this. You earned it. Now your presence alone makes liars nervous. It makes manipulators unsure. You've become everything they thought you'd never be, undeniable. So let the room shift when you walk in. Let the whispers fade. Because when a chosen one stops shrinking, the shadows have nowhere left to hide. And here's the final truth. This was never about being accepted. It was about remembering who you are. You were never made to blend in. You were never made for silence. You were made to shake things up, to rebuild what was broken. Your voice didn't just change your path. It broke open something that needed to be broken. And now that you've found your power, there's no going back. Keep walking, keep speaking, keep breaking what needs to be broken. Because you're not the exception, you're the wake-up call. And if this message reached your spirit, drop a 77 in the comment. Like, subscribe, and send this to someone who needs the reminder they're not alone. So my beloved chosen family, your love inspires us to create meaningful content just for you. If our efforts have touched your heart, you can show your support by clicking the Super Thanks button on your YouTube screen. Every bit of your kindness means the world to us and keeps us going. Thank you for being the amazing support system that you are. We're forever grateful for your love and encouragement. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye.